Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome once again to this EY Nordic Consumer webinar. Today, we're going to have two sessions. Anders, as usual, will give an update on how we are seeing the personas reacting here in this kind of reopening following the crisis, at least in certain countries. Then we have a really important area also, that's the legal function, and especially how the legal function is being impacted by all the changes from the remote working with the workforce, how it impacts the supply chain and the operations. And here we have two of our experts coming in from EY Law. I'll let themselves introduce you a little later. I would say this is our last webinar before the summer break, and we will revert back on the 20th of August, but we will notify you through our emails with the newsletters about the webcast coming in following the summer break. We are still planning to have webcasts more or less every week going forward, so I hope you will also enjoy those as we try to find relevant topics and insights that might be relevant for you in your current positions. But let me first of all hand over to you, Anders, and then Reino and Maniti can present themselves before we head into the EY Law part.
Thanks, Henrik. So today I would like to talk about how to succeed using insights, because insights on its own have little or no value, actually. It's what you do with your insights that matters. So since March, we have been focusing on identifying insights, but also giving you some very concrete advice on what to do with those insights. And when we spoke to consumers this week, for instance, they focused on their summer holidays. So people have made alternative plans and are looking forward to a different kind of vacation. Some are going abroad, planning for their quarantine afterwards. Some are doing simpler holidays, planning for bigger spending when the world completely opens back up again. So we didn't want to ruin the ambience or anything, but we asked about people's expectations on what they believe will happen after summer. And that revealed a lot of anxiety. Many are worried now that the pandemic will come back at full force and that we will have to take some drastic measures again. Okay, so those are basic insights. People are already afraid of the near future, and they might get rather depressed when that future comes. So what can your brand do to remedy that? And those are the kind of things we have been talking about during 12 weeks, and those are the kind of things I hope your company has gotten better at as a result of COVID-19. So this is our last session before summer, like Henrik said, and I therefore would like to summarize some of the most important points we have been discussing on how to succeed with insights. And first of all, EY have conducted a lot of long and short interviews with Nordic consumers during this crisis. We have sent questionnaires to thousands all over Europe, and we have scanned social and classic media to understand what exactly is happening out there. And the number one conclusion is that people are changing. They are changing more now than they have potentially ever changed before. And I mean, we all change as humans and therefore as consumers throughout a lifetime. But that follows patterns we as brands and businesses already know. Like people start studying, right? They buy cheap stuff. People get their first job, they buy better stuff. They get married, they buy stuff they didn't even think they would ever want. And then you get kids and you buy stuff you didn't even knew exist, and so on and so on. But what is different this time is that we do not know what these new patterns are. So needs, spending triggers, and consumer pain points are completely changing. And the companies handling the pandemic are the ones able to change with all of that new behavior. So how do you use insights to change? Well, if you want to change fast enough, I think you really need to use insights in a very agile way. The challenge isn't really about getting insights, but using those insights to feed an agile system, a system that acts fast in a smart way. So rule number one on how to succeed with insights is that insights isn't everything. Don't forget, think yourself. And like, when do I need insights? What kind of insights do I want? What do I already know? am I collecting insights only because someone said it is important to do so? The least effective way to use insights is when you move into, and I see this a lot, unfortunately, but when you move into some kind of a user insights dictatorship where nobody dares to believe in anything anymore. And that's a dangerous path. So be aware to never use insights as a collective excuse not having to believe in something, not having to make some bold decisions ourselves. For instance, waiting for 500 respondents to express their view and then start your concept development all over again is not an agile way to use insights. For instance, when someone complains about a feature on their Tesla on Twitter and Elon Musk answers directly on that tweet that he's thankful for the feedback and that Tesla now have updated their software, that is super agile use of insights. And insights are only going to get you that far unless you are able to make those feedback to action loops as compact and fast as possible. And another key element, and I cannot stress this enough, is to make insights actionable. It does not help you to know that your customers are worried unless you know something about what calms their worry. So every time you look at some kind of insight, ask yourself, what can I do with this? If the answer is I don't know, then the insight might not be that useful, or you didn't dig deep enough. So, and finally, very few companies are able to integrate and synthesize insights across their entire organization. And like Henrik talked about, that's why we have been involving a lot of different competencies in these EY talks. We've heard from experts on strategy, innovation, technology, digitalization, human resources, and more. So the point is that change should drive everything you are doing. And that, of course, also holds true for legal matters. So Raino, please tell us more about how these changing conditions affect legal operations as well.
Thank you very much, Anders. Thank you. So good morning also from my side, and if I may have the next slide, please, Maniti. So a little bit of background from my side. I've been mainly focusing on legal issues from business side, and I've been having a long career in a private company, leading business, running business. So in that sense, my point of view in this webinar also is not entirely from a kind of legal perspective, but how legal should be an enabler for business. And what have we now seen, even before COVID and especially during COVID. So now a few pointers on that. So if you look at the slide that you see on the screen right now, so we ran a study within EY and its clientele, and general counsel's offices namely. A couple of really interesting points have come up. So first of all, the cost pressures that early didn't impact the legal profession have started to come about. So 82% of companies are saying that they plan to reduce the costs over the next 24 months, and they have to reduce costs over 24 months. At the same time, nearly 2/3 of general counsels believe that legal function has fallen behind in technology and innovation, vis-a-vis the other departments in their organizations. Now, if you kind of put that into the scope of consumer business, which is all about technology, being finger on the pulse, knowing exactly what's happening on the market, what the sentiments are, as just explained by Anders, this is a little bit scary kind of proposition to start from, and really calls for action from this profession. At the same time, 59% of general counsels are reporting challenges in attracting and retaining the appropriate legal talent. So the talent that we used to think is appropriate for this profession or any legal profession has also changed and shifted, with the technology emerging. There's been a long discussion about how lawyers will become jobless due to artificial intelligence and so forth. That will not be the case. We just have to adapt, and it's all about this. 76% of general counsels are then matching these kind of challenges by saying that since I don't have the competencies, I need to outsource. And oftentimes outsourcing is a quick relief. At the same time, if you outsource something that you don't first master yourself, may be a big, mistake. The way that EY sees that, and Maniti will cover that later, is actually that, instead of talking about outsourcing, maybe a managed service is the way to look at it. How to complement your current offering of in-house department capabilities outside law firms with then, managed services enabled by technology. Now, then the profession itself, I was nearly 20 years away from kind of pure legal work. And when I came back after having been running businesses, to me it was really clear that almost nothing had changed. Lawyers still have their Excels and Word and mobile phones, email, but that's about it. Nothing much more, had changed in the profession from terms of kind of tools that are enabling the lawyers' work. Hence, still over a quarter of time is spent on routine tasks. Oftentimes, such routine tasks are something that is seen like low value. Hence, there's no real incentive to invest in technology or invest in people to do those works. Simply the lawyers will think that this is something we need to do and it's part of our work. But if you then again compare to how the business elsewhere has advanced, I think this is really a matter where focus needs to be shifted also in legal work in order for legal to be faster. And that's the point about this COVID times that we are living. Next slide, please. So if we then look at the kind of challenges facing the legal function, namely, so I will start from the rear side on the left. So firstly, if you look at how legal profession is working, I would simply argue to say that legal is too slow, simply too slow to match the needs of today. There's a demand for global transparency, which is lacking today. There's no single source of customer and supplier contracts and rights or obligations management, and then also challenging managing global compliance gaps in what comes up in daily governance. So this slowness is then something that is seen today especially, and I would argue here that if you look at again the consumer business, where the finger is on the pulse constantly, everything is based on data. What do legal departments have today? Nothing much to match with that. Now moving on to technology, this digital transformation really is something that needs to be addressed. It brings along a rapid shift in skills that are needed. There is currently, as I said, no enterprise-wide legal operation platforms in many of the businesses that I've seen. And this is really leading also to a situation where the risk management is difficult, and also the skill sets that lawyers possess are not able to even understand this. Many lawyers in-house departments have come from law firms and vice versa. Hence, this kind of sales departments having their CRM systems, manufacturing having their manufacturing execution systems. Legal profession doesn't have something to similar to brag about. Talent. So how do we see this? The young lawyers coming up today, they are faced with the situation where blockchain technologies and smart contracting should be handled. They are also seeing contract automation tools should be deployed, and the aging workforce, such as myself, is not ready for this kind of new skill sets. So how to then balance this talent? On one hand, having the know-how of how business works, and then at the same time being able to meet the faster needs of business change. This is the talent challenge that is seen at the legal departments today. Regulatory change. Typically, the world is becoming smaller, especially in the consumer business. I would say that if you picture online sales, I mean, this global regulation is affecting anyone. You cannot anymore say that I'll just manage my stuff in my local market or my regulatory market in where I live. It really is something that you need to master globally. Here again, the platforms to carry that kind of work are too traditional. Simply the lawyer way of working is that I will start collecting regulatory information from left and right from different countries, costs a lot, and when it's ready, it's already outdated. This regulatory environment is changing so fast that there has to be a platform for continuous development to manage this regulatory environment that we are seeing. Also, it's not enough anymore to say that I comply. One needs to prove that you comply. As an example, GDPR. The authority is now waking up. First fines have been, started to be issued, and it's not anymore a matter of saying that yeah, we comply. You have to be able to prove that you comply, and this is really a big change. What kind of platform, how it's done. Here I have seen that many have chosen to outsource this responsibility. Then running some tests, looking how companies are matching their GDPR requirements, I've noticed that nearly none are able to reply within the given deadlines to the questions that are being asked. So big challenge for the legal profession in this area. But then finally coming to the cost and value side of things. The cost reduction, as I said, is really an issue that is also hitting the legal department. And the third-party predictability then, from obligations management or third-party risk management perspective needs to be managed better. At the same time, the legal function is expected to deliver real business value. So the business has to be put to front and center in the legal as well. And this has really caused legal profession a kind of pressure to become a more integrated part of the value chain, delivering customer value. So again, this slowness, how long did it take for your legal department to understand the force majeure clauses in contracts of your supply chain when COVID hit? Question is, did it take hours, minutes, or did it take weeks or days? And when you ask this question, you really start to understand that what kind of platforms do the lawyers actually have to manage this kind of fast business requirements. And Maniti will take us through there a bit more in depth. What are the challenges there and answers to the challenges. Really, the legal expectation now is also then to be more flexible, more cost-effective, flexible. I would say a business partner rather than a law firm. So the key word here to kind of keep in mind is slow. How slow is legal compared to how fast it should be going further in supporting business. Next slide, please.
Thanks, Reino.
Yes, I hand over to Maniti now. Are you able to say change a slide? Yes.
So I think you're absolutely right, Reino. I mean, there's a definitely a transformation agenda that we're seeing across sort of every business, every interaction that we work with, right? And the question is always, what is the value that legal departments are able to add, right? And I think those in the consumer-facing business are definitely aligning themselves in legal with the larger business questions, right? How do I get my team to sort of focus on the key business issues? How do I start reducing complexity overall? How do I review my operating model sort of end to end? And this is very much aligned with sort of making sure that your legal operations are sort of future fit. And I'm personally a big believer that kind of the best way to look at the future is almost invent it. And I think as legal business partners who are constantly tracking consumer behavior and sentiment, measuring the impact of personal data in an evolving regulatory framework, a business that is going from bricks to clicks is a genuinely sort of new way of working that I think legal teams have just not experienced. And I think everything that comes alongside with that, which goes with managing a legal function, is definitely new. And I think our colleagues within the finance function, the IT function, the HR function, supply chain are all very much evolving sort of their operating model to sort of meet this new evolving world. And I think from a from a very simplistic perspective, I'm able to sort of look at this, in a sense of where are the aspects where, legal as a contributor to the business is playing the role of a risk steward and sort of, giving that guidance of, here's sort of the bet the company type matters that are coming up, and sort of the more business as usual aspects, right, which are very much around the day-to-day operational aspects. And I think if our colleagues in legal start thinking about that, and I mean, I'm a trained lawyer who spent my career sort of building a disruptive business to provide legal services. I think that's almost a very practical way to think about the scenario. And I think I want to share with the group, I mean, not an EY solution, but sort of an EY perspective, right? And I think the way in which we as EY are helping our clients answer some of these questions um, is definitely sort of premised on the idea of the value chain that legal sort of as a business function is sort of bringing to its customers, right? The people in the business, the supply chain teams, the salespeople who sort of want to make sure that they're able to close that cycle from a purchase to pay side or an order to cash side, and make sure that the contracts sort of following that are approved and are just going in a way that is kind of going to check the various boxes within legal. And I think that comes from a key aspect of trying to evolve the operating model. And I think within EY Law, we've kind of built this. It just happens to be built into our DNA, where we're leveraging the strengths of not just the strategic matters that come from sort of our practices, which are very much similar to, what our typical sort of law firms around the world bring to the table, right? But actually improving that service model, improving that delivery, and making sure it includes aspects of right shoring, right tasking, making sure we've got technology and process that underlines a lot of what we do. And I think we constantly ask ourselves these questions, which is this a routine matter? Does this really need, a lawyer based in a particular jurisdiction? Or is this work that almost can be looked at in a different way? And I think it's very much about creating that balance, for a legal department that is almost future fit. And I think we see a few areas where these routine matters come up a lot. And I think as we have the ability to sort of take a look at the technology solutions out there in the market, there is an ability to take these tasks that you're thinking about, and these are likely to show up on every single corporate legal department of every consumer business around the world, right? Um, and these legal tasks can very easily be deployed in a more creative way, right? Creative for legal anyway. And I think if we think about sort of these routine matters, whether they are, about managing your corporate entities or sort of doing your day-to-day contracts, or just, as you said, Reino, with the question of where are my material adverse changes that are going to impact my day-to-day businesses? Do I have a really clear sense of the government sort of stimuluses that are available around the world, and how do I as a business start tapping into these? Or perhaps the more broader workforce and restructuring sort of questions that people are constantly grappling with. I think there are tasks within each of these that genuinely present themselves in a more scalable and a more creative mindset. Um, and we thought it sort of will be interesting to share with all of you sort of a truly enterprise framework, that we've been able to see. And I think this is definitely newer in law. And people are getting more comfortable with the idea, and I think legal departments are definitely moving along that maturity model. I might say that because I'm sitting on the side of our business, which is constantly creating the best of people, process, and technology, right, and applying these solutions to legal questions. And I think one such question came up with one of our clients who was constantly debating with this idea of meeting the needs of a growing business, one that was on a fast track, but with with shrinking budgets, right? And this has been true even post-COVID, pre-COVID, I should say, and it's very much going to continue post-COVID. So in a way, a scenario that has always existed in front of us. And we were able to, not just sort of start with the idea of actually just throwing a technology solution at the problem, right? But really evaluating how is supply chain looking at the contracting model? Where do we come in as a legal division, and starting to look at actually how the engagement model is run. We were able to actually analyze, nearly 70 countries, and figure out how their contracts were structured. Where were they just spending tons of time constantly negotiating and renegotiating and drafting the same clauses, which actually add very, very little value when we think about the business stakeholders. But really, truly internally going through change management to make sure the operating model not only included internal lawyers, but it happened to include EY professionals. But the mindset was very much about creating a single front door through which requests could come in, but then analyzing enough data to say, where are the insights, and like Andres was saying in the beginning, using those insights to come up with a creative solution to say, we should almost start and make sure we're easier as a company to do business with. And that meant we had to revise our templates, and that means we had to revise the way we were negotiating with suppliers as part of supply chain. And that, of course, led to cost savings as well as a brief turnaround time. But I think the sustainability associated with a model like this is what I view as the future of legal operations. Having the ability to truly create a framework which can now start asking questions about how often am I creating contracts that don't end up getting signed? How do we apply principles of revenue and waste leakage, which is very well understood by the consumer companies, and bring that to legal? So I think I'll sort of wrap with the the legal portion of this by saying we're definitely moving to a more agile and a more demand response driven mindset, and making sure that we're taking strategic choices to sustain and transform everything that we do. Andres, Henrik, I'll hand it back to you.
Perfect, Manita. Thank you very much, and thank you, Rainer and Anders. Well, for me, this kind of wraps it up, really seeing all the impact that we've seen here in a very changing world, and then also putting it into a context to the real world with all our contracts and so on, and how that all fits in. So thanks a lot for providing that insight. Remember, we have the next webinar scheduled for the 20th of August. We will let you know through our usual channels. And then it's for me just to wish you all a very happy summer holiday, summer break, if you have a chance. Most of you will probably not be traveling that much, but please enjoy your own country. We have beautiful countries in the Nordic. So stay safe and have a wonderful day. Thank you.